Welcome to the Leadership Series. Today, my guest is Paul Umbrazunas. Paul's had a 30-plus year career in financial services and investment banking, holding global COO and MD roles with Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, and BZW, amongst others. He is currently the Executive Chair of Goodstack Australia, a fintech platform that focuses on charitable giving. He also holds 3 genuinely diverse board positions in Australia. He is currently the board chair of Cure Cancer, an Australian cancer charity focused on emerging cancer researchers. He is also, since 2020, a director, the chair of the Audit Asset and Risk Committee, and since March 26, the deputy chair of Afford, a disability services provider. And last but not least, he is a board trustee of the Goodstack Impact Foundation, a private ancillary fund. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Liska.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay. So, from investment banking boardrooms to not-for-profit boardrooms, what drew you to service in the for-purpose sector, and what surprised you the most about the transition?
I guess what drew me is pretty consistent with a lot of people who make that transition, is that you hopefully have gained some decent expertise in the commercial sector. Largely focusing on enriching shareholders and possibly yourself, and turning that around and saying, well, maybe my expertise can be used to help other people. That's the macro framework. And then in terms of where, it's driven again, I think a lot of people do the same thing by personal experiences, having personal experience with cancer and with the NDIS. If I could be helpful there, I'd like to be helpful there. So that's kind of what drove the process.
Any surprises?
Yes, but it shouldn't have been surprising. I mean, one of the things was just the degree of expertise that was already in the sector. I was largely ignorant of that. The people are fantastic. The dedication is outstanding, and it's focused on getting the outcomes it's supposed to get. So that's been a very positive surprise.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear it. Yes, I think a lot of people outside the sector don't actually know the quality and the expertise within the sector as well. So medical research, disability and fintech, 3 very, very different spaces. What do these 3 organisations have in common, or what do they face as board challenges? And then fundamentally, where do they differ?
Yeah, I think, and one thing I just want to go back, because I have a bugbear, which if I could explain.
Yeah, please do. That we're here for that.
Good. The concept of the usage of the term not-for-profit really annoys me, and I think we're moving towards.
We can say for-purpose.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to do it, because I'm trying to, and I struggle to think of any other sector on the planet that uses an exclusion to describe itself. When X, Y, Z manufacturing, we don't manufacture widgets. I mean, it's ludicrous, right? So we've moved to the for-purpose, which is good. Now, the issue with for-purpose is it's very similar to what I'll call the commercial sector, in that we've got stakeholders. We're not going to be the University of Chicago where everything must go to shareholders for commercial. We understand stakeholders. We've just got different stakeholders, but we're still trying to optimise for the same thing. So in the for-purpose sector, those outcomes are still being optimised. So all those processes, be it the optimisation of money to someone, infrastructure or services. So they're all common across the platform. The differences is just the delivery mechanism and the associated risks around the delivery mechanisms and the ancillary risks that go with those deliveries.
What about the limitations of funding, though?
Yeah, well, that's when we come to risks. I look at risks both at the micro level, but the important risk in the for-purpose sector is what I call the portfolio risk. And if I look at that, and I always look at risks in terms of optionality, upside, downside, what you get, what you could lose. The issue I've found in the for-purpose sector is exactly that. When I was in financial services, I was paid to take risks, so let's have a go. So let's do this versus that. In the for-purpose sector, there is an asymmetric downside risk if you try and do things outside, let's say, your core competencies. And as a result, your business levers are different. The other issue, as you say, is I don't have the same levers of revenue generation as I do in a commercial business in terms of changing. Well, I can change pricing, but I really don't want to. Change product, change offerings, new products, things of that nature are not available. So my revenue levers are constrained. And therefore my downside risk when doing new things is probably heightened as a result. So I have to have that mindset on a risk portfolio basis.
So we've talked about the difference in levers and shareholder-driven revenue and things. And when you're leading a mission-led, for-purpose organisation, how do you stay close enough to the mission and, say, the policy environment that is informing your operating environment without overstepping into management?
Yeah, that's really good. I'm a bit weird like that because I think what I do, given my background, I build a financial model of the company, right? And I've done it for years, and I build my own model, and I'll do the historicals, and so I'll try and understand the various levers of the company, what's good, what's bad, what has a disproportionate effect on outcomes. What does that do? It actually gives me a better understanding of what to ask management without stepping into management.
Right.
So I can be quite difficult in cross-examination, if you like, and I will ask my staff questions, what I would consider probably second and third order questions, which they should be able to answer, and they generally do answer. But having done that deep dive myself by modelling a company, it allows me to just better ask those questions, prepare, without stepping into saying, this is what you should do.
Do you think that level of detail that you take in your approach is consistently adopted across the for-purpose boardroom table?
No, but I think the thematic is and should be, because one thing that we've seen in every Royal Commission across every sector, particularly where there's been boardroom failures, has been a lack of being inquisitive. That's the constant word, inquisitive.
I don't disagree with you there.
So the only way to be inquisitive is to be able to prepare yourself and ask questions, but also then, as I said, once the management answers those questions, perhaps dig a little deeper. The only way to do that is by doing your homework. If it means doing more homework, so be it.
Yes. So at Cure Cancer, you were on the board. When Jeff Thompson departed, you stepped into the chair role. So what were the things that you needed to get across quickly? First question. And then part B is, what advice would you give somebody stepping into their first chair appointment?
Yeah, so that's kind of weird because I wasn't on the board of Cure Cancer before.
Oh, okay, I thought you were.
No.
Whoops.
So, if I was on the board, and most chairs usually come from the board, but this was kind of a strange situation. So I modelled the company first.
Right, got it.
So I got that down. But the biggest change from being, say, on the board of a board to being a chair is just this managing of the dynamic between the CEO and senior management and the board, both board and CEO, but also individuals on the board and the CEO. That was something that you just got to get your head around by definition straight away.
Well, that leads me to my next question, and this is for all the CEOs out there, because this is always a hot topic at our boardroom roundtables, so I've got three part of this one: rules of engagement between you and the CEO. What do you do early on in the piece to establish that relationship, and how do you manage it when things get difficult?
Yeah, so main rule of engagement is one I had when I was in investment banking, when I was a managing director, was I don't want to be blindsided. I just can. There'll be certain events and things where there's not enough time, but if you blindside me, that's just a no-no. I just be transparent, even if it's bad news, that's fine. We can manage that. So I want that transparency. I want what's presented to the board, because senior management it's like any data manipulation. Manipulation is probably the wrong word. Data selection, you can make the board papers bullish or bearish. What I want is as transparent as possible in terms of, if there's bad news, great, not great, but we'll work on it. So I really want that transparency. The other thing I do is I sort of position myself as what I say is a call option. So I'm old and grumpy, but what I've done is Mark Twain once said, good decisions come from experience comes from bad decisions. So unsurprisingly, I've made some bad decisions in my career.
Fancy that, Paul.
I know. But I've learned from them. And so what I say to senior management is, if in doubt, just feel free to call me. If I can lend my expertise or my experience, so be it. And the same goes for other members of the board. I encourage that sort of linear relationship. So when being on the board of a Ford, as head of the Audit, Assets and Risk Committee, I had still do, good relationship with the CFO. So we would talk about stuff. So you then create this underlying trust between the board and senior management because you can have these discussions, which then leads to a more transparent and open set of board papers and a more transparent and rigorous debate at the board meeting itself.
So earlier on in the piece, you raised royal commissions.
Oh yeah.
And you know it's out there that a Ford went through a significant governance renewal process after the Royal Commission findings.
Yeah.
What did that experience teach you about the role of a board when an organisation is undergoing that intense public scrutiny?
Yeah, and bear in mind a Royal Commission's a completely different animal from a judicial hearing, right? So you park that. So that was a really interesting time because both Carol Bryant, who's chair of the Ford, and myself, we're the newbies on the board. So we'd only kind of just arrived and this is all gathering momentum. So what I learned from that is a couple of things. Firstly, you own it. You just have to own it and take it on the chin, right? As you know from Royal Commissions, the first rule of Royal Commission is the first rule of the bar table is don't ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. So when they ask a question, they know what the answer is going to be, and you better get that truthfully correct. So take it on the chin. Even if you believe there are mitigating or extenuating circumstances, it doesn't really matter. Take it on the chin and own it. Once you own it, explain it to all stakeholders. This is
coming back to that stakeholder.
The broader stakeholders. So you've got employees, you've got customers, customers and clients, vendors, everyone. Explain to them this is what's happened. Say what you will do. Quite clearly, we intend to do A, B, C, and D, and then most importantly, do it and do it quickly. So the principal thing is take ownership. As I said, there may be in the background extenuating or mitigating circumstances. It doesn't matter. You've just got to own the process and then take it forward and then hopefully rebuild any lost goodwill as a result of that adverse publicity.
Okay, thank you for that. So we've talked about Goodstack being a fintech, and in a past life you were also a director of Fishburners, a for-purpose entity that supported over 5,000 startups. How do you bring an innovation mindset to a for-purpose boardroom table that might not naturally think that way?
Yeah, it's a really good question because a lot of them don't naturally think that. It comes back to that asymmetric risk return because I think a lot of for-purpose, it's like it's going okay, it's going well. Why do we need to mess about with it? Because we're getting outcomes. So I always talk about optimization, but I don't want to be investment banking optimization where I'm optimizing to the last basis point. I'm just looking at sort of small wins, relativity wins. So if I can optimize an outcome by getting more money to a researcher, if I can get better care to a vulnerable person, then I should look at those incremental steps. And the same should be looked at as innovation. It doesn't have to be this kind of massive change in curve or change in direction. If there are things where I can on a relative basis improve my outcomes through innovation in small steps, then let's look at those. So the first thing is just look at them. Because I think a lot of people are unwilling to look at them because of that risk return scenario. The second thing which I thought about, which we need to open up a bit more, and I get these thoughts when I'm riding my bike or walking my dog, right? So walking the dog today, I thought, given the risk return profile, I think there needs to be more collaboration between for-purpose on innovation in terms of innovative ways of doing things. Are there, in the disability services, for example, we're looking at where AI can allow our employees to spend less time on admin and more time with the clients. That sort of concept. And it might be that one provider has a really good idea and doesn't share it. So I think, again, driven by this risk return profile, in investment banking, I would not share anything with my competitors, because if I innovated, I want to make as much money as possible on that innovation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think, coming back to funding, I think sometimes there's this risk if you are going to share what is going to help you deliver a better return. It's the one competitive edge you have against your provider because of the way funding is structured. So same, but very, very different.
And I think the funding question is different from the costs issue, right? So I think funding it's a fair point, but there's, again, everything gets copied in due course, right? So everything gets commoditised and copied. So it's interesting, even in financial services, a lot of my big clients, very sophisticated clients, when faced with a new idea or product I had as looking after them as a client, they would say, actually, I want to be a fast follower.
So let somebody else go out there and do the tests.
Do the tests and risk. And then if it's really good, like we're there, we're reading. So I think not for-profit boards should adapt the same kind of attitude. We may not want to be on the cutting edge, but let's be ready to be a fast follower. If there's something, we've got the collaboration. If there's something there that we're hearing or seeing about, let's position ourselves to be able to execute on that.
I think there's absolutely a place for it and an appetite for it. It's who's going to be the leader in that space.
Which is why I think collaboration de-risks it, right? So if I can diversify the risk, if there's costs involved with the innovation, maybe we share those, we mutualise them somehow. There's often things you can do just by sharing information, which is free, again, without giving away any competitive advantage you may have on the funding side. I get that. Which will allow the sector as a whole to provide better outcomes. So I think boards have to be open to swapping some notes with other boards.
Yes, and boards sometimes tend just that interconnectedness might happen more at an executive level or even further down the food chain, as opposed to at a board level.
Yes, unless it's driven by personal relationships often, right?
It is, like most things in life,
right?
Yeah,
that's right.
So you've worked in London, across global markets, and now, Australian for-purpose boards. So what perspective does that global experience give you that you found useful in the sort of local mission-led context?
It's really just the ability to take in far more diverse ideas and opinions. It's a diversity argument, right? And also, on a relative basis, sometimes, Australia is best practice on certain things, right? So I did the Stanford Executive Program some years ago, and every night we would do case studies. So the idea was you go and have the lectures. There's a group of sort of 8 to 10 of you. There's a case study. You come up with solutions and you present it the next day. And you had executives from around the planet and different industries. And I loved it because you just got these perspectives from, we had a guy who, ran an airline in Asia. We have a guy from Chile who was running a manufacturing. I mean, these diverse opinions, you just go, this is outstanding because it just gives me that nudge to think a bit differently. So it's more the diversity of input that is hopefully applicable to what I do here, and leads to better outcomes again because you've had, I've heard of that from so-and-so, I've seen that from so-and-so.
It's very interesting because the AICD has just published their diversity report, and it's quite frightening how undiverse our boards are, just broadly speaking.
Don't get me started on that.
We will dive. We will go there. But I had a read of it, and I thought, it's exactly to your point, right?
There's a really interesting book called The Difference by a guy called Professor Scott Page, right? Written a few years ago, and it was about. It's diversity of thought, right?
Yes.
And it was about how a diverse group of people. So there's a couple of conditions. One, it needs to be a very complex problem. Otherwise, an expert will solve it by definition. Two is you need a sufficiently diverse group of people and a sufficient number of people to solve it. But ultimately, what Professor Page found was that the diverse thinking group would optimise better than the purported experts because of that. Now, again, there's got to be certain conditions mathematically that need to be met. But generally, that diversity has just got upside. Again, diversity in thought.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, go and read that report. It's frightening. So if there is one thing you could change about how Australian for-purpose boards operate, what would it be?
Yeah, I don't want to tell people how to operate, right? But I think, like you said, stop calling yourself not-for-profit. Right?
Yes.
That's just annoying. So let's park that. I think understanding the downside risks, still be open to, again, this idea of optimisation. Optimisation doesn't need to be changing everything and getting down to the last basis point or last cent. It needs to be, the view I take is as a board member or as a chair, we should think of ourselves as custodians.
Yes.
Right? So if you think of yourself as a custodian, what does that mean? It means I'm hopefully taking this institution on a better path, and then when I leave, it's better off and I've delivered better outcomes to people. So that's the mindset which I think most people adopt.
I would agree.
Right. And again, going back to the question about how I handle it, if it's a difficult situation with the CEO, again, I would say we're custodians of this institution. If you don't think you can leave it better off, then you can go.
Yep. Tough call. But yes.
But that's your job is to get it, and in a better place doesn't mean it's making a lot more money. That would help, but that's not the driver. The driver is to deliver the mission and the mission statement. Had a really good chat with a mate of mine who's the CEO of a company that funds schools and social housing and stuff. And he just knew, and he was talking to a nun.
Oh yes.
And he was saying, look, I'm going to have to change a few things because we've got to fix a few. And the nun says, John, I agree with you. No margin, no mission.
So true.
I thought that's.
I think that's accepted across the for-purpose sector now.
Yeah, so I think
it has to be actually.
Yeah, so the question is in the balance, because you don't want to run into the profit before people. You just can't by definition. But the other issue, just generally in the for-purpose sector across all cohorts, is this longer-term financial sustainability is a real issue. Right, which again comes back to why should I take more risk if my longer-term financial sustainability is at question? Like we did before, we have to restructure the balance sheet, restructure the business, put ourselves in a position to buy optionality. That optionality gives us time to consider things and do things. But I think you need to be relatively proactive in your thinking.
Yes.
Otherwise, a lot of times status quo is just not good enough. I mean, as I said, when I was in investment banking, we were paid to take risk. We were paid to be innovative because if we didn't, someone else would do it and they would win. I think it's a similar.
So it's that that idea that innovation, continuous improvement is another way of thinking about innovation, because it's coming back and making those small changes.
It's small changes, right? Yep. It's marginal, and over time, those marginal changes add up.
Compound interest. Yep.
Compound interest.
Compound interest.
So the magic.
3 final questions, my rapid fire questions for you, Paul. So, best piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
Yeah, it wasn't leadership advice rather than a general sort of saying, which is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth in that proportion for a reason.
Okay.
And so.
No, that's it. Rapid fire, right?
Okay.
1 word to describe the difference between chairing a board and sitting on a board.
It's really hard. I mean, responsibility or tone.
Tone. Good one, that one. And what is the first thing you read in a board pack?
Have a guess.
The numbers.
That's right.
And on that note, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciated your
You're
perspectives and your thoughts. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And I'll see you next time on the Leadership Series.